The families of 239 people aboard Flight 370 are in anguish tonight, and sadly my next guest knows all too well what that is like. Heidi Snow lost her fiancé in the crash of TWA Flight 800. She's the founder of Access, AirCraft Casualty Emotional Support Services, also the author of Surviving Sudden Loss, Stories from Those Who Have Lived It. And Heidi Snow joins me now. Welcome to you, Heidi Snow. You suffered the appalling tragedy of your fiancé, Michelle Brystrov, who died on that infamous TWA Flight 800 in July 1996. I want to play you, before I speak to you, a clip from a really heart-rending interview I did last night with Danica Weeks, and her husband Paul is on the missing plane. I want to play you what she said.
Thank you.
That's the toughest part every day, waking up and speaking, looking on the news and seeing that, there's nothing and there's no calls from Malaysia to say we've found something. And God, every day it just seems like it's an eternity. It's an absolute eternity.
Now, Heidi, you've been in that position. It was 5 weeks before you really knew what had happened to Michelle. What kind of advice can you offer to people like Danica Weeks who are going through this absolute wrenching torment right now?
Well, after my loss, I founded AirCraft Casualty Emotional Support Services because one of the things I found most important was being able to talk about it and to have people who could listen during this process. Because at this point, I was doing everything I could to keep him alive. So anyone who would listen and who would validate some of the thoughts I was having was really critical for me. And I was lucky enough to have a woman who lost her fiance on Pan Am 103 8 years earlier meet with me, and she really helped validate a lot of the feelings I had. At that point, I really held hope that maybe he didn't actually board the plane, or that he had somehow survived or somehow got saved, because when there's no remains and no confirmation, you really do hold on to hope. And that was very critical in my survival process during that time. But most importantly, having somebody to talk to who had been there before helped me tremendously, which is what led me to found the organization Access. And what we found since this crash, we've had a lot of calls from other people who are really brought back to day one, who remember that waiting time. We've had calls for help from people from hundreds of different air disasters over time, and so many of them have this waiting process. One of our board members lost her father in a private plane crash, and it took 3 weeks before they even located the aircraft. And for her, she's been through that, and really our organization validates this specific need that with most sudden losses, we really usually can figure out what happened. But with air disasters, it can be weeks, months, years, and sometimes we just never know. We never know what their last moments were like, even after we get confirmation that they were actually aboard the plane. There are so many questions, and we often don't even know the cause of the crash.
Right, and certainly in this case, they've no idea what even happened to the plane, which is, I would imagine, even more agonizing for these poor families. Heidi, stay with me. Let's take a short break, and I want to come back and talk about how the families of crash victims can get help they desperately need. Back now, as Heidi Snow lost her fiancé, Michelle, in the crash of TWA Flight 800 in 1996. Heidi tells us how families of crash victims can get help. Heidi, this is the crucial point. We've got about a minute left, but how can these families get the proper support?
So at Access, we have 250 grief mentors who have all lost loved ones in air disasters, who are on call for the families. And so we have a helpline and our website, which is www.accesshelp.org, where people can request care, and then they'll be partnered up with somebody else of like experience. We match mothers to mothers, siblings to siblings, spouses to spouses. And for example, in Danica's case, we do have people who lost spouses, who have young children, who could benefit from talking to somebody who has been there.
Great. Heidi Snow, thank you so much. It's incredibly important and very useful. Anything you want to add very quickly?